Speaking of prohibitively expensive, Ron, are you ready to be prohibitively entertaining? Because that's what we're going to do.
Yes, I'm not really sure. Sure, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, you take it away because this is your
prohibited.
Yeah, prohibited. So this is your time to take the lead, Ron. So take it away, Ron. What are you doing?
I was going to ask you about that, Clive, because I think we have a bit of a new thing going on here.
Okay.
Which is I think we haven't actually experienced before in any of our previous 1 million podcast episodes.
Hang on, Ron. Isn't this just going to be you and me blathering on about some films for a while?
It will be, but here's what I feel is different. Okay, so of course we follow our algorithm, which is that my choice from last episode, I get a loose connection to my choice this one, and then you have a strong choice to my blah, 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 right? But here the issue this time is that my choice, which you reacted to, was actually my choice is actually also a reaction to yours. It was made as a reaction to yours. Do you see? So you need two brains to understand this, right?
Yes.
All right. So the idea is that actually you chose your movie as a reaction to mine, but my movie was made as a reaction to yours.
Oh no. So are we now stuck in an endless feedback loop?
so we're in Inception or something. So
right.
The top will never fall. So my
suggestion
was that actually the way I watched this time around was that actually I watched your choice first.
Okay.
Because my choice actually was a reaction to was made as a reaction to yours.
Yes.
So I was wondering if we wanted to try it a little different this time and actually do, even though yours was a reaction to mine, actually do yours first because it sort of comes first in the timeline here is better, right?
Well, we could if you insist.
I think my choice makes more sense in light of yours. Does that make sense?
If you insist on it, then we can.
I don't insist. I'm a wishy-washy.
Then let's do
it. Nothing. So I'll do whatever you tell me to do.
Okay, Ja, we'll do your one first then. And if you allow me, I'll explain myself in poetry. I think if I read a piece of poetry, you'll understand.
Okay.
Pointy birds. Pointy.
Damn it, I was going to do that.
Anoint my head.
Anointy.
Yeah.
I have to say, I was totally going to do that. Damn it, you stole it from me. I was going to do Pointy Clive. Pointy. Anoint my head, Clive.
Baldy head. Baldy. Right.
So those of you who are clued in may have already guessed what we're going, and of course you probably just read the title of this podcast episode, so you probably already know what we're doing. But yeah, so my choice, my last choice of last episode.
Wait, Ron, what podcast is this? So people go and get lost.
Oh, right. So someday we'll actually get this right. How many episodes is this? We've
1,000,000,005. Yeah.
Okay, so welcome to the Magic Morning Wood.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Ron. What's your name?
Clive. Hello, Ron. Nice to meet you.
How's it going, Clive?
Good. How about you?
You threw me off with starting with prohibitive. Okay, so so my last choice of last episode was "I'm gonna get you, sucker." And saying that, I'm worried that people, will actually accuse me of being racist because it's hard to say that sentence without sounding like you're doing a black accent, or a black accent. Is that what they call it? So anyway,
Ron, I'd say to that, don't worry, because it ain't no thing. It's fine.
So my reaction to "I'm going to get you, sucker" is
I am going
to get you, sucker. I decided to go with other parody and spoof films, which we talked a little bit about last time, about what you think constitutes a parody and a spoof and what doesn't. So I decided to go with another spoof film called The Man with Two Brains.
Or, as I pronounce it, The Man with Two Brains.
Was that like a Eastern European accent? What's that?
I don't know what that was. But it was definitely offensive. That's the main thing.
Offensive to Eastern Europeans. Yeah, right. Yes. So, yes, The Man with Two Brains, the 1983, correct? Yeah. That joke never gets old.
It never gets old because it was old to begin with, I think so.
Directed by Carl Reiner and written by Carl Reiner, and also co-written by Steve Martin and George Gipe. And starring Steve Martin and Kathleen Turner. And this is a direct parody of the movie, of sort of mad scientist movies, but more specifically Donovan's Brain.
Yes.
Which, again, as I said, is based off, which was your choice, which is this one is. I'm going back and forth. Okay, we'll get to Donovan's Brain in a bit. Actually, Donovan's Brain actually has a small. You see a bit of that movie in this one.
Do indeed. Yes, it's Steve Martin's character, Dr. Har's favorite film, right?
And Kathleen Turner is watching it, and he's like, "Oh, this is my favorite movie." And so they actually do a direct reference to the movie that they're referencing.
Speaking of the Dr. Har thing as well, I realized that this is one of those times I've conflated something from two films in my head, and I've been misquoting this film for years. I've probably done this to you. When something similar happens in another film, I've often said, you know, like in The Man with Two Brains, where people can't pronounce Steve Martin's character name, so they do Dr. like that. But because I thought that was this movie. It's not this movie. And I kept
this movie, no.
And then I figured out that's actually Fletch. Which is a kind of, I always think of, I don't know, Steve Martin and Chevy Chase as kind of like, the yin-yang each other.
Two of the three amigos, right? So.
Yeah, and also I've always thought of like Steve Martin is genuinely funny, excels at playing assholes, but seems to be a nice guy from what I've heard. And Chevy Chase is not funny and plays a kind of nice man, everyman, but apparently he's a total dick.
Real asshole in real life.
Yeah.
So he's they're sort of like the opposite of each other.
Right. So maybe that's good. But no, that's Fletch, which is actually a film I haven't seen in a long time as well, and I don't know. Yeah. I was never a huge. Some people love Fletch, right? Like it's a thing.
I haven't seen Fletch in a really long time too.
My head around it.
I just recently, you're saying this now, just sort of sparked the memory that I have to say, like within the last few months, I've heard like talk of like a Fletch reboot or something. I think it's quite possible. So I remember just because I haven't thought about Fletch in years and years and years, and then I just remember I'd heard someone talking about that movie just recently on a podcast or something.
Well, it's I mean, what's his name? Kevin Smith has been trying to reboot Fletch for decades, right? It seems.
Oh, really? Has he? Okay.
But I don't know if that's who's actually doing it now or not.
I don't know if it's true or not, but I'd heard that there was talk or something.
But I think the thing is, because it's based on a series of novels, and I think the novels have a certain cult reputation. So I think there's quite a lot of material you could, it's not necessarily redoing Fletch and Fletch Lives, right? There's a lot of other stuff. But again, I think I read the first Fletch novel, but again, I can't remember, but I think it went, the cult appeal of the novel and the movie went over my head a little bit. Yeah.
Not your cup of tea.
Maybe not. I'd have to have another. I don't remember hating either of them. It just didn't grab me the way it grabs some people.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, so how many viewings of The Man with Two Brains was this for you, Clive?
Because I remember this being a childhood favorite. I think it had been on television at some point, and I recorded it off TV, and I thought it was hilarious. And because I was big into my spoofs at the time as a kid, as I'm sure you were as well.
So, when choosing my choice for this episode, I was kind of going back and forth between this one and Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid.
Okay, I'm glad you chose this one.
Yes, and so actually, to a bit of a confession, I actually went to your book and I read your reviews of those to see which one you would prefer more.
Oh, you blew the cobwebs off it, and
so in a way, you chose it because
okay.
But and a bit of a confession. I'm sort of coming out. I think it's sort of my own personal closet here, a different kind of closet. But I've actually never seen this movie, so I'd never seen it before. Yeah. So actually, again, coming out of further closets, I've never seen any of these Steve Martin, Carl Reiner movies, including The Jerk.
Wow.
Until this week. I watched actually all 4 of them this week.
Oh, okay. Because I would have thought...
That's wrong. Sorry. I think I had seen all of you. I think I'd seen
all of me.
All of me, sorry. But the other 3 I had never seen, including The Jerk, which has been on my, I have to watch this soon list for years, so I've never gotten around to it. So
if I'd have had to have bet money on it, I would have bet money that both The Jerk and The Man with 2 Brains would have been favorites of yours for years and years.
You would think so, right? Yeah. So and again, these are just ones that just sort of kind of were just popular right at the wrong time when I wasn't able to watch movies like this. I mean, I'm sure my parents wouldn't let me watch these. This came out when I was what, like 6 or something like that. So I think it was just, and then it just sort of like, floated to the back of the video store. And I think it just sort of, I remember seeing the video case with, Steve Martin with his head coming off and like the, whatever. So I remember seeing that video case many times, but it just sort of like always was one that I just never got around to. Right. And I'm a huge Steve Martin fan. And of course a comedy fan and sort of, I appreciate a good spoof, which we talked about last time, as long as they're good. But for some reason, this one and Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid all just sort of escaped my my notice, or I just sort of like kept falling back. So I figured I'd use this as basically I'm going to use this podcast as a chance to catch up on all those movies I've been meaning to watch for years. So
So you watched all 4 in the past week?
So I watched all 4. So I watched Donovan's Brain first because I wanted to see what this movie was actually parodying, and then I watched that one, and then I watched the other 3, Carl Reiner. And I have to say that as much as revered as The Jerk is, I thought The Man with 2 Brains was actually superior. I think it's a better movie.
Right.
I think it's a funnier movie.
The Jerk and Man with 2 Brains are definitely the best of the 4.
Best of the 4, that's for sure. Yeah. Yeah. But I think, I think generally speaking, people consider The Jerk to be one of the best of all time. I think, so I didn't think it held up as well as this one does. I think this one holds up over time better than The Jerk does. I think The Jerk got a little dated with some of the stuff.
I haven't seen it in a long time. I don't suppose you got around to watching the TV movie sequel, The Jerk 2.
No. Who was it with Steve Martin?
No, it was someone else. I don't think I've ever seen it actually. No one much liked it, I don't think. It was a TV movie toned down sequel to, as in TOO as well, and someone who wasn't Steve Martin playing The Jerk.
So I'd say of all the 4, I like this one the best. So I was glad that I got this one. The Dead Man Don't Wear Plaid, I think, was very clever in the concept, but I think
funny, right?
Not that funny, and not so good in execution. I think the idea was great. If they had, I'm sure it took a lot of research and a lot of a lot of work to get it to work together. Because for those of you who don't know, listening, they took actual scenes from actual old film noirs with people like James Cagney and and Veronica Lake and all those people, and they kind of spliced Steve Martin's character of a gumshoe in it, and it sort of makes it so like they're actually supporting characters in this movie. But the problem is that because it's sort of like a square peg in a round hole, or they're kind of like trying to shoehorn it in. It just makes no sense. This movie is just sort of like, okay, here's a chance to have a scene with this character and this with this actor. So in general, it was kind of like, oh, okay, it was clever, but it doesn't really.
Right.
It's certainly not funny.
All of Me, if I remember correctly, All of Me is a little bit closer to a slightly more conventional kind of comedy in a way. Like it's not this kind of hit and miss gag structure so much, right? So it's a bit more, has a dramatic narrative. And
right, yeah. And I think most of the comedy in All of Me comes from like the Steve Martin's physical humor, right? So with him trying to like, with him having Lily Tomlin inside of him and having to, deal with having like a woman in his body and stuff like that. So I think a lot of it just comes from Steve's acting, right? Rather than and Lily Tomlin, who is a funny person, is not funny in this movie. So it's
I think of it, All of Me, I think of it as a bit of a bridge movie, I suppose, because you have these kind of early outings for Steve Martin under Carl Reiner, and then Carl Reiner provides this kind of bridge to the mainstream, because I suppose it's easy to forget now, but mid to late 80s into early 90s, Steve Martin was a proper box office proposal, right? Like you could sell a movie as a Steve Martin vehicle, which I'm not sure if you could do now, or certainly he hasn't seemed to have tried to have done it for a long time. Anyway, let's put it that way.
Well, he sort of retired mostly. I mean, he's in the new show. Have you seen Only Murders in the Building?
No.
Yeah, so it's him and Martin Short.
I knew they'd got together again because they did some kind of onstage thing, didn't they?
They did an onstage, like a live show, and then they've got a new TV series called Only Murders in the Building with the two of them, and it's like a young
you're off mic a bit there.
A young Latina star. It's hold on, give me 1 second. With Steve Martin, Martin Short, and Selena Gomez. That's right, Selena Gomez.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it was pretty good. My wife and I watched it. It was pretty decent. It kind of ran out of steam a little bit close to the end. But
is it a comedy? I'm assuming it's a comedy.
Yes, it's like a comedy murder mystery thing. Right. So it's not bad. So he's still around. But I don't think he's not really. But he mostly had retired for years to concentrate on playing the banjo.
Right.
Yeah. So now he's actually like that's what he does, is he plays the banjo. So he'll tour, but he'll like do more banjo shows than he does actually like comedy shows now. So he's just sort of like, he's just changed focus. He just doesn't do that anymore, right? So
does he?
Because I think Steve Martin is he's up there with the biggest comedy geniuses of all time, I think. So
does he do repartee between the banjo numbers, or
I haven't seen the banjo show, but I saw the live show with Steve Martin. It's on Netflix. It's like an hour and a half. There's a lot of like real like corny, like kind of like old school vaudeville kind of like comedy duo jokes. But it's you have. It depends on how much you like Steve Martin and Martin Short. If you like them, you enjoy kind of their repartee and their sort of like their obvious love for each other, but like their barbs and stuff like that. But it's I enjoyed it, but it wasn't. I feel as if and he has a little bit of banjos playing in between. So
I feel as if you had tickets to a Steve Martin show and you went and he just insisted on playing the banjo all the way through, it would be a bit like, when the bands refuse to play their hits, like only material from the new album, right? Thing. You'd be slightly disappointed.
I think that's kind of where he is these days, right? So, but
right.
Yeah.
But I don't know if he's a good. I'm assuming he must be a pretty good banjo player, but by now,
so yeah. Yeah, I don't know what to compare him to, but but that's his thing now. He's sort of, I know for a while he had completely retired from acting and had decided to do it just banjo for a while, but I guess he's come back to acting to some degree. But
it's my big wish to one day get hugely famous for a short amount of time, quit, and then come back, but only insist on playing my washboard.
Your washboard, okay.
Yeah, and
I was going to go with my French horn, but.
You keep your French horn where it is, young man.
Yeah.
So
my French tickler horn.
So anyways, back to the man with
so you're saying it was a bridge. What was the bridge?
No, All of Me would have been. So like All of Me was. I get the feeling All of Me was a bit closer to like a more well-rounded kind of family-friendly kind of,
right.
And then he went on to do Roxanne and Three Amigos and those things, right?
Right.
Whereas I think these films, The Jerk and Man with Two Brains and Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid, are slightly more like they're different territory, right? I guess.
Yeah, I guess they're more like adult based. I mean, I remember seeing the Three Amigos in the theater when I was in elementary school, and it was like that was the shit back in the day. I would go when we went back to school the next day, and we were all doing the
right.
like it became like like that's what we all did, right? So it's that so that was sort of I guess where he became like the family friendly comedy artist, but
right.
I guess it was a little more edgy, I guess, this earlier stuff, right?
Yeah, so. And then he got into the slightly more mature, less comedy, more acting period with things like LA Story and stuff like that, right? And then I guess you where else do you go? Oh, I'm going to quit and play the banjo, right?
Play the banjo.
Yeah. He did the trajectory, right? He did. Yeah.
But anyway, back to this movie. We have so many tangents in this one. But the Man with Two Brains, I think, was I'm so glad I finally got around to watching it because I fully enjoyed this movie. I was really, I was smiling through the whole thing. I couldn't say that with any of the other three Carl Reiner movies with Steve Martin. That they were kind of like, that was kind of like I chuckled a little bit. Some of them I didn't laugh at all, but it was interesting to watch. But this one I was like chuckling all the way through. There were some really, really good gags in there. So
it's I think it's gloriously silly all the way through, right? Like even if some of the gags don't quite land now and again, it's still it's so just really silly all the way through. Right?
So I think this is a proper good spoof, right? I mean it draws attention to the source material, and then it makes fun of it, but it doesn't just draw attention to it. It doesn't just point to it. It also kind of turns it on its head and makes it a joke in itself, right? Which is, I guess, what a spoof is supposed to do, right? So,
I think it works. I mean, that's the thing. The test of a good parody is it works if you've never even fucking heard of Donovan's Brain. You don't necessarily need to be aware that it's a spoof of anything in particular, I don't think.
Well, that was my, we'll get to that when we get to Donovan's Brain, which is that I watched Donovan's Brain first because I thought that I would appreciate this movie more having seen Donovan's Brain first, but I don't think I needed to. It was not necessary at all, right? So other than the psychic brain, there was not much else actually that it had in common, right? So
it's more in general. There's there's a few, like you said, mad scientist tropes, or like Steve Martin walking like ego kind of thing, or the brain snatching so what's in a nutshell, Ron?
This is me. I have two brains. I'm in a nutshell.
I haven't heard that for a while. What is the kind of plot for people who haven't seen The Man with Two Brains?
So Steve Martin is he's a brain surgeon. He's a brain surgeon, very very famous, very sort of like brilliant brain surgeon. So great lines where he's at the beginning where he's being interviewed for the newspaper, and he says, where he talks about like what was the so would you read that back to me? I'm afraid it might make me sound pompous to your readers. My brilliant research in brain transplantation is unsurpassed and will probably make my name live beyond eternity. Well, that's all right. Take out the probably, it makes me sound wishy-washy, right? So so he's very
Steve Martin's good at doing this stuff as well, isn't he?
This like real pompous, like full of himself kind of asshole kind of stuff.
Maybe he was just copying Chevy Chase.
I guess so. Yeah, in real life, yeah. To be honest, that I think maybe that was one reason why I didn't enjoy The Jerk as much, because he didn't do as much of that. He was more kind of like the simple, wide-eyed, naive guy in that one.
Right.
I think that the asshole is more of his kind of wheelhouse.
I agree.
So,
I mean, again, I haven't seen The Jerk for, and I remember liking The Jerk, but yes, to your point, I always seem to remember thinking that The Jerk is definitely Steve Martin slightly playing against type, right?
Right, yeah. And then later on, after he becomes rich, spoilers for The Jerk, 43-year-old movie, but he gets rich. and then he sort of becomes that sort of asshole a little bit, but it wasn't really earned because he had been so good and naive beforehand that it was sort of like, it was a little bit of a it was a stretch, I think. So it didn't land as well. So, but in this one, he's all the way from the beginning. So I think it's quite good. Yeah, he's real pompous folk, I think. And anyway, so he is a brain surgeon. He's developed this technique of screw top brain surgery.
Yes.
Where he basically screws the top of your head on and off, right? So
like a child-proof lid, right?
Child-proof lid. Yeah, he shows it.
Another good gag.
Yeah, that's a good one. And so that
especially when he does two surgeries at the same time, right?
Yes, yeah, because he has to get home real because he has to get home to have sex, right? So, so he accidentally hits a woman with his car, played by Kathleen Turner, and has to do brain surgery on her, and does brain surgery on her, and they fall in love and get married. And,
right, he falls in love, right?
Well, you think that they are in love at first, anyway. So I mean, with the figure sucking, I guess.
Really? Didn't you think he was a gold digger right from the very beginning?
I didn't, because I guess she was unconscious, I guess, right? So, but I mean,
no, but you see her with her previous husband, right? Like making him mad and attack, and So she's obviously she's a gold digger. And so they get married, and but she won't have sex with him, right? So she's withholds sex, but she's like having sex with like literally everybody else, right? Like the gardener and all stuff. And he's very sexually frustrated, and he to an admit. In fact, I think this film must have really informed me from a young age. I think because I remember those scenes of him like just ripping door handles, and I think I took the lesson from this film, like never let yourself, always make sure you give yourself, even if it's self-relief, do it often so this doesn't happen. And I've
it's Steve Martin's fault.
So it's very informative, this film. It's true though, right? You don't end up like because he's like humping x-ray machines and things, no, that's not a good place to be. And always give yourself a release.
So you're at a Pink Theater in Tokyo watching like some random transgender person giving another guy a hand job, and you go, "Damn you, Steve Martin!"
Well, no, I'm saying that's right, Steve.
Thank you, Steve Martin.
Evil Steve Martin.
So anyway, he's very he's, as you said, he's like ripping door handles off because he's so frustrated. He's got his hat, like the old gag where the hat is stuck to his pants,
right.
So
worth saying as well,
cuts a hole in the glass with his penis.
Worth saying as well that as good as Steve Martin is in this role, Kathleen Turner is perfect as well. I think Kathleen Turner is quite excellent in this.
Right. Yeah. It was only her, I believe, second role. I think so. She was like still This is before she became famous, I think. So she, so she's sort of supposed to be this kind of beautiful gold digger, and anyway, so he gradually, so he meets this other, I don't know, is it just I guess another mad scientist interested in brains?
Yes, this is where he goes. He goes to a conference in Austria, and he decides, we'll have a honeymoon as well. That'll put her in the mood because she's basically not giving him any, right?
Right. And Dr. Alfred Necessiter,
right?
And who is also great gags where he's like lives in an apartment, but you open the door and it's like this full-on like castle inside the apartment. Right?
David Warner, who's always fun to see,
and also with Paul Benedict as his butler, right? So,
right.
Yeah, and anyway, so he's got all these brains in a jar, and he wants to keep them alive. So it turns out, at the same time, there's also an elevator killer around, right? So people are being killed in elevators, and so
with a cleaning fluid, washing up liquid, basically, right?
Glass cleaner,
yeah.
So he figures out that now that Dr. Necessiter has the brains from the people who've been killed by the elevator killer.
Right. He's got some evolutionary way of keeping them alive in jars with no electricity. So he's some kind of fluid or liquid or something, right? That's keeping them alive without any external stimuli.
Right. And then so Steve Martin, Dr. Herfer, realizes he can hear one of the brains speaking to him in his head, played by uncredited Sissy Spacek, right? And he falls in love with his brain, basically. So he falls in love with the, so he, full on, other great gags where he's gone on a rowboat, a romantic date with a brain, and he gets these wax lips. He puts the wax lips on the brain. He's kissing the brain and stuff.
I also quite like as well when he's being showed around David Warner's amazing condo, which is actually a castle. And he goes, leaping lizards. Yes, we have that too.
There's lots of great dad jokes.
Very, very silly. Yeah.
And anyway, Kathleen. So he finally kind of realizes that he's in love with the brain, and that Kathleen Turner is actually a bad person, and so he, throws her out, the scum queen.
Right.
Into the mud, scum queen, which is a real thing. So apparently, Kathleen Turner for years got called the scum queen, even in her
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, apparently, it would be reviews of other movies that she was in, and they would call it the scum queen from the men's. And then he finally finds a way to he wants to put her brain into another body, so to give her the brain a body, then you get rid of Kathleen Turner and then have this brain in a body, and he can marry that one. And so he kind of turns into this sort of homicidal maniac, trying to find women to kill that would suit him, so he could put the brain in and then have that be his perfect woman.
Right.
And then realizes that it should just be Kathleen Turner herself, who is who he's already married to.
He does try a prostitute, played by Randy Brooks, who's really good in this as well. She has this extremely irritating voice, right? It's some kind of New Jersey accent or something.
And she's singing the Duke of Oil. That's my favorite song. Duke of Oil.
Let's have a party. Duke of Oil. That made me laugh. That was it's good because I feel that's I feel as if that's coming more from the Carl Reiner side, because that's the other thing. I think it's a really good synthesis of Steve Martin and the Carl Reiner side of things. I think that's one of the reasons it works. So because it creates something a little bit different. It's neither one nor the other, right? It's somewhere in the middle.
And so then he finally ends up putting the brain or the consciousness into Kathleen Turner, who ends up, it turns out that was actually an overeater, and then ends up fat at the end, and there's a bit of fat shaming jokes at the end.
The one slight kind of bump, I guess.
Which is him. It's a little bit of a
I also like the can we borrow your battering ram gag? That's another one. Funny, I'm watching this. So much of it came flooding back to me from watching it when I was a kid. And it still worked pretty much.
Yeah, that's what I said. I think, as I said, I watched all 4 of the Carl Reiner, Steve Martin collaborations, and I think this one holds up the best of all of them, right? So I think I really just giggled all the way through, and it was really, and I think it did what it was supposed to do. It was it took the source material, and even if that's the problem with spoofs, is a lot of spoofs, you have to be familiar with the source material to really get the jokes. Whereas this one, I think, was able to do it without that, right? With the idea that as long as you understand what a mad scientist trope is, you can get it, right? You don't need to know the actual specific movie, Donovan's Brain, as long as you get the idea of what is going on here, right? So, and even if you didn't, I think it just works as a standalone comedy, not even as a spoof. Right? So,
the only other thing that and this isn't necessarily this is just one of those kind of can't be helped chug and eye things is so the elevator killer reveal is Merv Griffin, right? And the thing is, that's fine. It's a good enough gag. But the thing is, nowadays, I think most people, younger people, would be, who's Merv Griffin?
Who's Merv Griffin? Exactly, right? So I mean, that's the problem with choosing a popular celebrity, is that they're not.
Right.
No one knows what it is
But that
anymore,
is
right?
the gag, right? I mean,
yeah, exactly, right.
because you never know what.
I know the name Merv Griffin, but to be honest, I don't actually know what Merv Griffin looks like. So when he turned around and it's supposed to be the big reveal where you see his face, I'm like, wait, who's this guy?
Yeah, I
was
didn't
like,
know.
it's Merv Griffin, okay.
But you can never tell who's going to have the longevity, right? Because the thing is, if you imagine, for instance, if they'd have used another, like if they'd have said David Hasselhoff, that would probably still just about work because he's still kind of in the zeitgeist.
Exactly. But who knew David Hasselhoff would be, though, right?
Yeah. So, you wouldn't know, right? You would have thought people would have totally forgotten who Merv Griffin is.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, I like the joke of it being just like some random celebrity that just decided, that's a good joke. The problem is I think Merv Griffin was not the right choice because it just...
Yeah. Because I like the way I enjoyed killing as a young man, but then I became famous and I was unable to do it. So to move to Europe. It's a solid gag that's dated. It's in spite of itself. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Nice little bit from a pre-reanimated Jeffrey Combs as well.
Oh yes. As well, yeah, I forgot to mention that. Yeah, so there's a cameo from it's the Reanimator himself. Yeah,
Yeah, well, I don't think it would have been a cameo yet, right? No one knew who he was. I think it's just an early bit part.
No, I mean, it's a cameo meaning that it was a very short, small role.
Right, I see what you mean. Right.
But, not a cameo of someone you would know. But yeah, so it's like isn't that the Reanimator? Yeah, so it was okay.
And that is quite a funny bit as well. It's like, one of the more kind of incongruous. That was, I quite like that little bit. It was confusing.
Because I think that was a joke that they didn't even know would be a joke because it became a joke because he became synonymous with a mad scientist, right? Like in the future, right? So, yeah.
James Cromwell in there as well. I also quite liked. I thought the music by Joel Goldsmith was pretty good. The score was pretty good. Shot by. I thought this was worth bringing up as well. It's shot by Michael Chapman and kind of most famous for shooting both Taxi Driver and Raging Bull for Martin Scorsese, which is kind of interesting, Michael Chapman, because you got both are kind of stylized in their own way, and just the diversity there is kind of remarkable between Taxi Driver and Raging Bull. But what's kind of interesting is he's got a load of other interesting films in his credits, and he's able to Michael Chapman just seems to be one of those most diverse of cinematographers that can just shoot a film really well without drawing attention to itself as well. Like he's just a really good kind of artisan, but also, he can do something like Raging Bull, for example. So kind of just another reminder of, what a great cinematographer Michael Chapman was.
Cinematography is such an interesting skill because the best cinematographers are basically invisible, right? I mean, they make you forget that they're even there or doing anything in the first place, right? So, once you get a cinematographer that is sort of doing you're thinking about the cinematography, it's almost like you're not doing your job, basically, right? So it's or it's a different kind of job, I guess, right? So yeah. So it's So anyway, good on him.
Other than that, personally, I just had good fun with it. I'm glad to watch it again. I'm glad you chose it. It was it was a lot of laughs.
Yeah, and I'm glad I got to finally experience it, after 40 years.
Right. Moving on, I guess.
Moving on. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So
we're
yes,
going backwards.
Yes, as you said, Man with Two Brains was inspired by 1953's Donovan's Brain, black and white, kind of. Yeah, well, it is a science fiction movie, based on Kurt Shodmak's novel. Have you seen Donovan's Brain before, Ron?
No, I'm not.
Based on Kurt Shodmak's novel, he also wrote the script with Hugh Brook, directed by and Felix Feist, who also had a hand in the script. And this one is about. So there's a doctor played by Lou Ayres who is working on, I guess, brain waves, and along with his wife, played by future First Lady Nancy Reagan.
Yes.
And Gene Evans as kind of their alcoholic co-worker who he's kind of covering up for.
I will say that, just going back to Nancy Reagan, I actually didn't know Nancy Reagan was an actor. I knew that Ronald Reagan was, but I didn't know Nancy Reagan had.
Yeah, she was in movies with Ronald.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I know that now, but I had not known that before this. So.
Yeah, no, both are acting couple, on-screen couple before they were a couple.
Right.
Yeah.
I think they were married about maybe just before this movie, around the time this movie was made. Right. So.
Yeah. Yes. Anyway, there's an airplane accident in their vicinity, and Lou Ayres' character goes there and tries to. There's a one lone survivor, and he tries to, save his life. It turns out to be a millionaire, the Donovan of the title, and he dies. And while he's there on the operating table, they decide, kind of just for shits and giggles, why don't we remove his brain and see if there's still brainwave activity?
Well, I mean, not shits and giggles. I mean, he's sort of like he's like a brain scientist, and he really wants to do. He has this idea to keep this brain alive, but he has no access to brain, so he decides to just steal this guy's brain.
Right.
So he's so he's basically trying to save this guy's life from a plane accident. Dies, and he's like, well, let's just take it. No one will notice.
Right.
Notice the brain's gone. Right. So,
and it turns out that the brain is showing signs of activity, so they put it in a tank and kind of keep it alive. But this is illegal, obviously, so they cover it up, and they don't mention that they stole his brain, and so that seems to be that. But eventually, this brain ends up seeming to have some kind of strong telepathic hold over our doctor character, and he also turns out to have, the original Donovan seems to have involved in some kind of tax evasion scam, right? And he has all these he has stashes of cash that he can't access. So via this telepathic link, he seems to kind of take over the doctor's brain and make him do things, and he starts acting like him, talking like him,
dressing like him.
Yeah, everything. And then he kind of every now and again, when the brain kind of goes silent for a while, he regresses to his own normal. So he has this split personality.
Breed.
Yes.
And the brain is basically trying to get him to get all his money back and basically resurrect itself in the body of this doctor, right?
But of course, there's flies in the ointment, for instance, in the form of this kind of quite eagle-eyed reporter played by Steve Brody, who knows there's something on, and he starts blackmailing him and stuff like that. So it's an odd kind of, it has this hard SF conceit, but mostly plays out more like a kind of crime drama or a thriller or something like that, right? As opposed to a
it sort of reminded me of a like an extra long Twilight Zone episode, basically.
Yes, there's that as well. Yeah. And watching it this time, something I didn't pick up on watching it in times past was I quite liked how, and I've read the source novel as well, but it was a while ago, so I can't remember, but I don't think this was in the novel. I think this might be unique to the film, is I quite like the fact how they don't come down hard and fast on the fact that this brain is definitely controlling what he's doing. There's like a slight chance that he's kind of doing it himself, right? That like he's talked himself into, you know.
Did you got that? I didn't get that at all. I thought that because there's the part where it, the other people like the Nancy Reagan and the drunk friend, they both claim that it's kind of controlling them as well, or they can feel it. So I never really got the idea that it was just him.
Yes, that's when it tips over a bit more into, it's definitely the brain doing its thing, I think. But early on there, because he goes out and he buys he gets all these magazines about this dead Donovan, and he learns everything about him and how he dressed and what his personality was and all these things. And early on, the Gene Evans character kind of says to Nancy Reagan, he's not possessed by the brain. He's doing this himself. It's kind of a split personality or some, disorder. Or he's talked himself into this, kind of like the split and fight club kind of thing, right? Yeah. But no, you're right. It does spill over more into, because the brain convinces the other guy to shoot himself and stuff like that. But for a while, I thought it was riding that line of,
I didn't get that, but
okay. Like I said, I don't think it is in the source novel either. So that could just be me. And the other difference between the novel is the film has a very kind of plastered on happy ending a bit.
Yeah, it was so strange. It was so like he shoots the drunk friend who they're both trying to stop the brain, so they break in, and then he ends up shooting him, and he kind of drops to the floor. And then there's like this sort of like this lightning rod thing conceit where the lightning comes down, and then they were going to try to shoot the brain, but it doesn't work. And then the lightning comes in and just fries the brain. And then it's like, a couple of days later, and it's like, oh yeah, well now we're all good. And oh yes, good thing he lived from that gunshot.
Right. Yes, he'll be fine.
Waving from the car. Hi at the end, right?
Yeah, it's a bit of a handbrake turn there at the end, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think if I remember correctly, spoilers, I think in the book, I think he dies while killing the brain, I think.
Oh, okay. It seemed like it struck me as maybe like a studio, like, no, you gotta make no one's gotta die, no one's allowed to die. You gotta give it a happy ending. But then it was just sort of like a good thing he lived.
Right.
Hey, right? Like it's like
yeah. So what did you make of Donovan's brain, Ron?
Yeah, I thought it was good fun. it was it was, again, as I said, it was like a Twilight Zone episode. So I thought it was
right.
I thought it was an engaging sci-fi story from the 50s. I think it was okay. One question I had, I don't know about your take about it. What was the idea that Donovan was psychic, or that something to do with how they were keeping the brain made it psychic?
That's a good question.
I didn't understand why the brain was psychic.
Yeah, there was talk of, wasn't there? There's a certain part where they make a big deal about getting some kind of equipment that you can hear what's going on, right? You can hear the brain. So I'm wondering if if it's like boosted the signal or something,
or was Donovan himself always psychic or something? That's maybe why he became rich or something. Or
I don't know. Could you impose his will on people? Kind of.
Yeah. So he was sort of like, he became rich and
right.
And powerful because he was just making people do his will or something.
I feel as if that there might have been a bit more of that in the book. Actually, I think it might be more to that end.
Right. Okay. Yeah. That he had already been psychic.
Right, and not psychic, but. A mixture of someone with a strong personality, and I don't recall, and there's another couple of versions as well. There was an earlier one in the 40s called The Lady and the Monster, and then there was a British one in 1962 called The Brain as well. So this story's been told a few times, and apparently, I didn't know, they were looking this up, there was Orson Welles played the Doctor in a radio adaptation of Donovan's Brain as well. It's one of those films, I think, that like when I was growing up as a science fiction fan, Donovan's Brain had quite it was considered one of those 50s classics.
Right.
Classics. Like well, obviously I would have seen clips of it in Man with Two Brains, and it might have turned up in Joe Dante's Explorers or something, like, one of those things that had clips from, or maybe it was on it might have been in like an episode of Muppet Babies or something, where they opened the door and there was a clip from Donovan's Brain, or Muppet Babies, or that show Dream On.
Right, yeah. Okay, yeah.
For whatever reason, there were clips. I remember seeing clips of it before I'd even seen it, but I did see it quite young, and I was quite the horror and science fiction film young. So I saw it young, and I saw it when it still had that kind of cult thing. So, so over the years, it's been interesting to return to it, because I think it's been brought down a few pegs a little bit. Like I no longer really think of it as a classic of any kind, but I suppose it's difficult but I suppose in 1953 onwards as well, you didn't need, just that image of that brain bubbling away in the tank, and the idea, growing, and the idea of it sending out, it's a cool conceit, right? For SF kids, right? And horror kids. So the other stuff, that's good, that's fine. That it's good enough. It's like, like you said, Twilight Zone, or like a crime drama. But we're basically here for the brain.
Yeah, you're here for the brain. The psychic brain. Evil psychic brain.
Yeah. Right. Kurt Shodmak as well did direct. A favorite of mine, actually, just before this, there's a film called The Magnetic Monster. And he also directed Bride of the Gorilla. He did write a sequel to this novel as well, called The House's Memory.
Okay.
Which they made a TV movie of in 1970, which I haven't seen, and I haven't read. I do have it because I've got a twofer here, Donovan's Brain and House's Memory, and I remember reading Donovan's Brain, and I haven't got on to House's Memory yet, but one day, and then I'll try the TV movie out.
Is it like a direct sequel, like it picks up the characters or the same brain or something? Or
I don't think so. I think it's more just going back to some of the same themes, I think.
Okay.
Rather than
and do you remember in the original novel, like, is the brain destroyed at the end, or is it like go on to like rule the world or something, or is it through like lightning, or is it because like something else?
I said, I think they kill the brain. The doctor kills the brain but dies in the process.
The doctor does.
Yes.
So the doctor like kind of bites it. Okay.
Yeah, and kills it and then dies in the process, I think. I don't remember. I had to look.
Not the drunk friend.
No.
Okay.
I had to look that up though. I don't remember if the drunken friend was. If the friend was. It's been a while since I
right. Okay. May not even be a character, right? So.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think it's fine. It's pretty good, like you said. I was very interested actually to see what your opinion as a first-time viewer and seeing it for the first time now would have been. And to be honest, I anticipated you might have found it more boring, but you actually seem to have kind of enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, it was a science fiction movie from the 50s. I think it's, I think I knew what to expect going in. I mean, right. I don't think this is, I don't think I'd ever go out of my way to watch it again. I don't think it's like I wouldn't necessarily recommend it to, you got to watch this movie. It's just sort of like it was a 50s science fiction movie. So it was, as long as you know what that entails, it was fine. It was pretty good. It was entertaining. It held my attention. I mean, I do wish that they had gone a little farther with some stuff. Like I wish the brain had done a little bit more, or I wish they hadn't done that kind of like tack on Deus Ex Machina at the end. But it was entertaining. It was fine. I enjoyed it.
It's difficult.
And it was good. And it was nice to see also where the Man with Two Brains came from too. So.
Yeah. It's difficult to find much else to say about it, really, isn't it? I mean, it is pretty much what you expect it to be. I'm not sure if it's going to surprise you. But if you've never seen it and you are an SF horror kind of person, you should probably take a cursory
look at it at some point.
Yeah. And if you're a Nancy Reagan completist, then obviously it's a must see.
Say no to brains.
Say no to brains.
Yeah, right.
Especially telepathic ones that belong to
just say no. Just say no. Just say no. Just say no to brains.
Millionaires.
Yeah.
You heard it here first.
See you next time.
Talk of churches and then underground trains. Two grown adults, but we got no brains, no brain. Got no brain. And that's what you